Hello, welcome to Kick Media. My name is Brendan Comerford. Today I'm going to run through our vlog on a common question that we get quite often, and it's a misconception that really requires some more, I guess, detailed analysis and an answer to it, I guess. And that is, does a Google AdWords account really need to be managed? And it's a great question because it is something that businesses aren't used to. They're obviously going back to the days of yellow pages, and it's a set and forget strategy. But there's a number of factors that need to be considered before we answer that question. So let's take a step back and look at what's really involved in Google AdWords management, and then we can give you, I guess, our definitive answer to the question of that, and I guess some of the scenarios that we need to factor in. Now, the days of yellow pages advertising is dwindling. It's a shame, however, because it was a set and forget strategy. You could place your ad once a year and forget about it until the next year. The unfortunate reality is that online advertising has actually become an auction for very limited advertising space, as you can see on the screen, the difference between how many businesses could fit on yellow pages versus a Google search results page. And it's Google who has obviously become the equivalent tool for finding products and services online. Now, unlike the yellow pages where 100 businesses could display, you can see there's about 12 listings that can appear in the paid section of Google. Now, of course, you can also appear on pages 2, 3, and 4, and so on. However, 90% of people don't go past the first page. Why is this? Well, look, there's no clear reason. However, I think people generally know that if you can't find what you're looking for on page 1, there's no point going to page 2, as you end up seeing almost quite often the same listings. So this leads, I guess, to a question and a large issue, I guess, of supply and demand. And I guess we can illustrate that if you ever go to a Google map, and you can see the little map listing here, if you actually go to Google and go to Google Maps and type in Plumbers Brisbane, you'll see how many red dots there are on the page, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plumbers throughout Brisbane. So that's just obviously using an example of Plumbers Brisbane here. On the map listing, but you can try it for your industry, and you can see, and it gives you, I guess, an indicator of how many businesses there are and how competitive it is in your industry for that term. So I guess the rule of thumb or an indicator for you is the more competitive it is, the more expensive it's going to cost. So if you've got hundreds of businesses appearing on Google Maps, if they've obviously got a Google My Business account, they'll be able to have a dot appear on the Google Map. Then it gives you a good indicator on how expensive it is. And Plumbers Brisbane is an expensive industry. You're looking at anywhere from $10 up to $25 per click for a top 1 or 2 position. Now, apart from the fact that this is astronomical in terms of cost, unless you are a major franchise, there's really no way a local plumber can afford this. It also means that the competitiveness on Google is also going to be through the roof. So I guess the question is, what does that mean for a business? If you've now identified one of the factors is how competitive your industry is, and Google Maps is a great way to find that out. But really, the second factor obviously is that Google is an auction. Similar to eBay, which has an auction for bidding on products, Google has a similar but very much more complex auction that instead of bidding for a product, you're actually bidding for advertising space on Google to appear for products and services that are being typed in. As you can see here, AV audio cable, it is an auction. They've got Google Shopping, and there's people bidding. You can see the prices there. It's actually very similar to eBay, very, very similar supply and demand economy, I guess. Now, basic supply and demand says that the more and more people bidding, the more competitive it's going to be. If you have every bid at auction on eBay, and if you've ever done a bid on auction at eBay, you obviously know that it can get quite frantic in the last few days or few hours, right up until the last minute even, where people are constantly trying to outbid you. And some have bidding tactics. Some people know little tricks to try and outsmart you on eBay, especially when it's bidding for something emotional that people really want. Now, the amount of bidding activity depends on how many people are bidding or how many competitors are wanting the same thing. Now, this is no different to Google bidding. Okay, depending on obviously how competitive it is, the more or less bidding is required in order to stay competitive. Now, in the case of plumbers, of course, this would require a lot more active bidding and optimization. So the first criteria of whether an account needs to be managed, I guess, is based on how competitive the bidding is going to be. for advertising space. And as I said before, the best way to determine that is jump on Google Maps and type in a keyword for your industry and just see how many businesses are appearing in that local area, and work out it's probably about 30% more businesses are actually in that area because they may not have a Google My Business account. If the first page is, another way to look at it is just generally Google the major keyword for your industry. If the first page is full of 10, 12 advertisers, and there's also on page 2 there's new advertisers, then chances are that there's more work required to continue outbidding your competitors for that advertising space. So, question: how does the Google or how does our bidding strategy work, and how does the Google auction actually work? So we'll go through those two key questions. And the first one is you can see here, understanding how the Google ad auction works, and that's Hal Varian, the chief economist of Google, and he actually goes through as a video. If you go into YouTube and type in insights on the AdWords auction, it's about 8 minutes, but it's quite interesting if you want to know how the pricing mechanism works and how the auction algorithm actually works, the very basics of it, of course. He goes through that. It's actually really good. If you're an advertiser on Google, I recommend everyone watch it. Don't feel like you have to understand it. It does get a little bit complex toward the end and toward the middle, but it gives you an overview that, look, it's not just about how much you pay. It's not about paying more to appear in position 1. It's all about relevance and this concept of click-through rate and so forth. But once you understand that, then I guess it's important that, to then realize that, okay, there's a lot more than just paying for a click. We need to understand the algorithm and be competitive, and it can get quite overwhelming for a lot of businesses to understand this concept of relevance. So in order to, I guess, explain a little bit more detail, I'll show you our bidding, how our bidding strategy works. And look, bidding on Google is not just about appearing in position 1 for the lowest possible cost. Sometimes position 1 is actually too expensive, and will just not provide the profit that you're after compared to the cost with your Google budget. So we need to really find out, and I guess we refer to this as finding out what is the sweet spot, which represents a good balance of high volume and high value, or good value and good volume and good value. For accounts that provide us a lot of data on inquiries, whether it be you're tracking obviously conversions on phone and form and live chat, we can use that data to work out what is the best average position that provides the most volume and value in terms of inquiries, not just traffic, not just clicks. So in some cases it can be ideal to display in position 3 or 4 to get a good balance between volume of inquiries and cost per inquiry. In fact, you may find that if you try for position 1 or 2, inquiries can actually drop if you are hitting your daily budget every day. You may not have enough budget and you're hitting it early, and your volume of inquiries actually is limited because of that. So you may not be able to afford, in other words, Google, position 1 is too expensive for you. So we need to find that equilibrium of volume and value at the right average position, and we do this through bid management, and we do it at least 3 or 4 times a week for all of our clients. Now, throughout the day and throughout the week, you'll have different levels of competitiveness. You may find more advertisers on a Monday compared to Wednesday, and you may find other factors like new competitors coming into the market recently that have new businesses, or big brands that are doing a promotion for keywords that you normally appear for regularly. Seasonality can also influence where that sweet spot is in Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, holidays, kids on holidays, you name it. And that obviously affects the seasonality of demand for different positions. So if you set and forget your average position, a sweet spot, and you don't really bid manage around that, it can, you really aren't having a lot of control on getting the best value out of your Google advertising, unlike Yellow Pages, which was set and forget. However, there are some industries where, look, it is actually really important to appear high on Google. In this example, though, you can see position 2.3. It's not about position 1. You can see you're getting the most, a good volume of traffic, but also a good cost per click. You find that sweet spot. If we were to increase it to position 1, you can see the click volume decreases again, even though, and your cost, because your cost per click is now at its peak, at its highest level at position 1, your budget may not be able to afford that, so you hit budget early and your click volume is low. So low average positions, you can see, have low visibility, resulting in low click volume, simply because of the reason, nothing to do with your budget maybe, but just because you're not getting visibility. People aren't scrolling down the page or looking on the left, on the right hand side for the other section of paid ads. So, but sometimes it is necessary if you're in a very competitive industry and it's position 1, 2, and 3 is just too expensive. There are, like I said, there are some industries where it's important to bid for position 1, and let's have a look at that. You can see here the sweet spot suddenly changes. Sometimes position 1 is the sweet spot that delivers the ideal balance between high clicks and low cost per click, or high volume, high value. Yep. It's a little bit tricky. We need to find out what that sweet spot is and maintain it on a regular basis. For accounts that provide a lot of that data, we can do it quite quickly. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. Now, the industry that we're referring to obviously is factored into this. There are some industries where, for example, that sweet spot there, let's have an example, emergency plumber. If your bathroom is flooding, do you really have time, or do you care about going through 3 or 4 different websites? No, you call the first website you see in position 1 because your bathroom's flooding. However, if you've got a product or service where most people like to shop around or do some research before they make a decision, they often don't make a decision on the first thing they see. So you may find that position 1 may actually provide more traffic and more clicks, but less inquiries if you're in position 1. So maybe changing it down to position 2 or 3 will get less traffic, and the opposite, we get less traffic but more inquiries, and that's quite odd, isn't it, when you think of it like that? So position 1 is a great way to achieve more traffic, but sometimes less inquiries, so you need to factor that in. It depends on your buying cycle of your industry. So if you were to set and forget your Google AdWords account, you'd not be able to, I guess, calibrate or adjust for the regular changes required to maintain the sweet spot on Google, between value and volume. So our team applies bid management techniques at least 3 times a week on every account to ensure that you stay competitive. So let's have a look now, and I guess ask the question now, is there such a thing as peak performance? Now, we implement a number of optimizations initially to transform the performance of an account, and we generally see immediate boosts in performance, and often it's quite a dramatic boost, especially in the first 2 months or 6 to 8 weeks. As you can see on the page, these are accounts that have just taken over. You can see that the before and after. You can see on the date, the last 2 nodes on the right there down the bottom, the blue line is conversions, and it's just tripled or quadrupled, and quite a significant increase. And the cost per conversion, you can see, is also decreased, that orange line, and that's something that occurs quite rapidly depending on how bad the account was before we took it over. However, this is usually the start. It doesn't actually plateau, but the rate of performance increase does start to slow. So, and it slows to a longer term gradient of performance, and it does continue to increase. Now, we have accounts that we're still finding optimization improvements even after 12 months of management. So, and this one's an example of one recently that you can see it started off strong, and now this is that was a month ago, and then we've got accounts where even 12 months in, we're still, like this one, we're still getting 20% increases on a fortnightly or a monthly basis, it's often something that continues for sometimes, depending on your industry, sometimes 6, 12 months or more. So the question is, does an account need to be managed? The answer is absolutely yes, if we can continue to increase performance. But then the question is, well, what if we hit peak performance? Well, yes, it needs to be maintained, as you see in the bid management requirements to maintain performance. If you don't continue managing an account, it can go backwards quite quickly. And I guess the other challenge is, if you're optimizing a new or even an existing account, you can't make too many optimization changes at once. Otherwise, you don't know what changes resulted in a positive or negative effect. So again, that's the reason why we test and measure, make some changes, get some more data in, review the difference in performance, and then make changes based on the positive or negative outcome of that. And that takes time. Sometimes it takes 6 to 12 months. We've had accounts even after 2 years, we're still finding opportunities to boost that performance, just because some industries take a lot of time to build data and conversion data. So I guess it comes back to that question again: does an AdWords account need to be managed? And I guess the definitive answer is yes. But there are factors that determine the level of time required to manage each AdWords account, and there's 5 real factors that we've come up with. And the first one is budget. The more you spend on Google basically means the more there is to manage. But always try to avoid, I guess, agencies or management services where it's a percentage of spend. A bit of a conflict of interest when they get paid more based on how much money they spend with Google. I've had examples where I've worked in media agencies when I was a bit younger, and I've been able to achieve some phenomenal results by lowering their spend with Google but increasing their inquiries. And I often remember getting in trouble by my manager for not spending enough money on Google, and here I am scratching my head and I'm like, but I got a good result. So definitely want to avoid percentage of spend management fees. Definitely a conflict of interest. Budget obviously determines how much time there is required, how much there is to manage and how much time is required. Volume versus value is the second one. This means optimizing your account structure so your ads are the most relevant for the keywords being searched. We also need to obviously gradually optimize the targeting methods, and sometimes simply just avoiding your ads from appearing for the wrong keywords being searched on Google, and that just takes time. As I mentioned, we need to gather enough data. Then after we achieve that, the best practice again is to obviously maintain that balance between volume and value on Google, and that's a maintenance strategy. We find that we've found quite often a lot of clients have potentially tried to obviously pause their account, thinking what would happen if we pause our management and stop doing anything on the account altogether. And 9 times out of 10, when we do that, we do find it takes sometimes a few weeks, depends on how competitive the industry is, but it does go backwards quite quickly. And in many of those scenarios, the clients come back on and obviously resume the management of their account. And it's unfortunate that they have to realise that the hard way. The other one, obviously, number of competitors. How many people are trying to outbid you for an average position? The more competitors often means the more bidding required each week to stay competitive, and I guess never overpay for an average position. If you don't manage your bids regularly, Google will happily take your money for bidding in high positions that you really don't need to be in. So be wary of that. And Google will change based on the supply and demand of new competitors coming to the market, or just time of day, day of week. More demand will in the market will dictate the average position Google will allow you to appear in. So don't let Google dictate what average position you should appear in. You need to manage that and not let Google make those decisions for you. Long-term performance improvements and maintenance. So obviously here is something where, like I said, we can make too many changes at once, and if you do that, you're not going to know what positive or negative effect occurred. It can take 12 months to really achieve peak performance sometimes, so it depends. Every account's different. Like I said, we have a number of clients that every now and then try to, obviously want to pause their management and realize that, that was a mistake. The more competitive your industry, the quicker the performance will start to drop. And if you stop that optimization and stop the bidding tactics, then you really need to stay on top of it. And all that investment sometimes that you've put into achieving that peak performance can be lost in a heartbeat. When I say heartbeat, I mean 6 or 7 weeks, and it can take 2 or 3 months to get it back again. So it really is unfortunate. It's one of the things we come across a lot in the industry is people stop the optimization and it goes backwards, and then trying to get it back to peak performance can be quite an expensive process. So just be wary of that if you decide to stop the management of an account that's at peak performance. You've got to maintain it. Very, very important. And then obviously reliance on Google. If your industry relies on generating leads from Google, there are some industries that Google's the only lead generation tactic that works. The more reliant on Google, the more fierce the competition we find. In fact, you find a lot of competitors are out there trying. I mean, obviously Google prevents click fraud, and it's pretty safe, obviously, in terms of spending money based on people clicking your ads who are trying to obviously do the wrong thing. But still, they're trying to outbid you all the time. So just be mindful of how reliant your industry is on Google. And that's another big factor. So 5 key areas that you need to consider on whether your account needs to be managed. We obviously find that there are some accounts, not very often, but we do come across some accounts that it's not very competitive, it's quite niche, and it is to a certain degree a set and forget strategy. It might be something where you do something really niche, like picture hanging hooks or something for galleries. There's might be 3 or 4 competitors in Brisbane that maybe do that particular thing. You might do netting for golf courses. There's probably 3 or 4 major competitors in Brisbane. There's not and generally if you can tell by going into Google and typing those keywords in, and you see, look, there's only 4 people advertising. There are industries where, hey, maybe management is not needed. Maybe you just need to be set and not forget, but set and monitored, and changes made every now and then. As long as it's not too expensive, there's not a lot of competitors. So that is an example where maybe you don't need management, but you just need monitoring, or you need a maintenance package. You don't need to be paying a lot for that, obviously. But in a lot of cases, look, Google's not getting cheaper. It's only going to get more and more competitive, and everyone's using it to find products and services. So it's a necessary, unfortunate expense for a business. And if you're going to need to advertise on Google, you need to make sure you're doing it right. So we've got a lot of tactics in place to make sure that you get the best value out of your advertising spend with Google. So give us a call and we'll go through and do an audit on your account, and we can determine what are the opportunities to save money and what are the opportunities to increase inquiries and obviously increase revenue for your business as well. So give us a call. We do an audit. It takes about 15-20 minutes. We record the video for you. We send it to you so you can have it there. And look, some of the changes you can make yourself as well. So we're doing those audits every day. So feel free to give us a call if you'd like an audit on your account today. Okay, thanks for listening. Appreciate your time, and we hopefully have you speak to you soon in terms of a consultation or doing an audit for you. Okay, thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.